Hi everyone, it's Jessica, your Enneagram life coach, and I want to do a video here about who you should partner with, like who should be your life partner and also who your friend should be given your Enneagram type, because that's a question I get all the time. So I have a few responses to that. The first and strongest response that carries most of the weight in this question is that, well, let's put it this way. Your Enneagram number, no matter what number you are, 1 through 9, is synonymous with the word ego. It represents your ego. And we all have egos. And that's fine. We have egos or personalities that we develop in childhood, and they serve us and they help us to survive, and they help us to navigate life, and they help us to operate within a certain framework, but they're not objectively true. None of ours. Okay. So your Enneagram number is think of it like a cloak that you wore and a lens that you looked through that helped you to make sense of the world, but it wasn't real. It's just something that was helpful at the time. Now, the more Enneagram work you do, the goal of Enneagram work and the clients, when I coach clients, the goal is not for you to like double down on your Enneagram number. The goal is to see where our number is basically holding us hostage to old beliefs and false stories and ideas that aren't serving us, and how to realize that we are equipped and empowered to make other decisions that aren't determined by our Enneagram type. So in some sense, the more self-developed we become, the less apparent our Enneagram type is. That's because, when we have, for any of us, our egos are pretty strong. And, people in culture use the term ego. They usually mean somebody who's like really big-headed or something. That's not what we're talking about here. But on the other hand, no matter who you are, and I know there will be resistance to this, but your ego is sort of big-headed. Even if you don't think of yourself as the big-headed person, we're all pretty much self-serving, especially when we're not healthy, right? So that's why doing Enneagram work allows us to become more and more healthy, to rely on God more and more, our inner guidance, to follow truth, not the old lies and not the old stories, to shine light in the darkness. And as we shine light in the darkness cannot overcome it. So we see these things about ourselves. We go, wow, I realize that that's how I've been operating. And I don't even think that's been really serving me. And you learn to be able to adjust yourself as you are guided in a moment by moment basis by being present. And eventually, the ideal would be that you hold on to the skills and the traits of your Enneagram type that have served you and that do serve the world at large, and to release those that don't. Okay, so back to the original question. Who should you partner with given your Enneagram type? Well, you should just partner with a healthy person. That's the most important thing, because all Enneagram types, so what we're saying is you should partner with somebody who is on the path of releasing their egos, because unfortunately we're not all on that path. Some people continue down the ego path, and you can see this as it like hardens, like your Enneagram beliefs or your false beliefs crystallize with old age sometimes. Not always. Some people choose to have a soft heart and a receptive heart, but some hearts of stone continue to be harder and harder as they age. And so we want to be the kind of person with a pliable heart who is able to truthfully navigate life and be present in each moment. And that's the kind of partner you want, because that's the person that can problem solve. That's the person that's not overly defended, who doesn't have to be right all the time. That's also the person who's not going to be a doormat so that you can be right all the time and take advantage of them, right? This is somebody who has healthy boundaries. I did a video earlier this week on boundaries by Enneagram Type, so go catch that if you haven't seen it. So a healthy person by far is the best type of person. Okay, now the second thing I would just bring up if we're talking about who you should partner with is I did a video recently on the subtypes or the dominant instincts, which is either self-preservation, social, or sexual / one-on-one. And I have not yet done a breakdown of all of the types and what that looks like, but basically somebody who shares your dominant instinct will be more aligned with you regardless of their Enneagram type. So if you are a self-preservation person, if you lead with self-preservation dominance, and if your social instinct is repressed, because we all have all three instincts, we have them in an order, first, second, and third, then it'll be easier. I'm not saying you can't partner with somebody who doesn't share your dominant instinct, but you'll see the world in a lot of similar ways if you do partner with somebody who shares your dominant instinct. My husband and I we share the same dominant instinct. Now our second and third place are swapped. That's a little tricky. And really, most of our relationship bumps come up because of that second and third place swap. So ideally, and this isn't an ideal world, so let's be real, but ideally, if you're with a mate who has first, second, and third, the same as your first, second, and third, that's dynamite, man. That's incredible. And it doesn't have to be that. I just shared with you, my husband and I don't have that. We have a fantastic marriage, but it would be easier if he would just switch those two and align with me. Just kidding. Okay, so number one, a healthy person. Number two, somebody who shares your dominant instinct at the very least. They don't have to have second and third, but at least share your dominant. Or another thing that would be tricky is if your first place is their last place and vice versa. That would be tricky. Okay. And then, all right, here's a more complicated response now. And I'm also going to give you like some Enneagram insider tips here. When people want coaching based on Enneagram, relationship coaching, and even though it's usually in the context of a romantic relationship, I will say this goes for any relationships. You and your parents, you and your siblings, you and your best friends, you and your neighbors, you and your coworkers. When we understand people's Enneagram types and how their personality is put together, it gives us, hopefully, it gives us a lot more grace to understand where they're coming from. And there are 3 different ways to look at Enneagram types that I will go over here now. That basically take all 9 numbers, put them in a bag, shuffle them all up, and then rearrange them into different groupings. And you're not going to find somebody who's like only somebody with your exact number is going to have the same exact alignment with you. And I'm not recommending necessarily that you partner with somebody who shares your Enneagram number. But what I am trying to shine light on here is the different ways that we show up. So let me just dive into it and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so the first thing is the Hornevian groups, named after Karen Horney. She was the researcher that found this out. She wasn't an Enneagram lady. She just came up with this. And this is social styles that people have, and these are ways that we get our needs met. How do we get our needs met? Well, in Enneagram, you can basically put the numbers in 3 groups of 3. There's all sorts of triads. And as a simplification, within each of those groups, we can tell you how those people get their needs met. So in the Hornevian groups, for instance, there are assertive types, and you've heard me mention this before, types 3, 7, and 8. Even though they do it differently, they are all 3 assertive types, which means the way they get their needs met, if you ask them, what will resonate with them is they go after what they want. They set a target and they go directly after it. They don't they don't pass go. They don't collect $200. They just go right for it. Very direct towards what they want. Those are the assertive types, 3, 7, and 8. Then we have the withdrawn types that for their own specific reasons, type 4, 5, and 9, when they need to get their needs met, very often they will retreat. And they retreat for 3 different reasons, depending on their types. But the point is that they move away from people and they try to resolve things in their own privacy. Now, the 4 is generally doing that to deep dive into emotions. The 5 is generally doing it to get information. And the 9 just wants some peace for the love of God, right? So, but that's how they will respond. They will withdraw. And then you've heard me mention the dutiful types 1, 2, and 6. Dutiful types, when they want their needs met, they subconsciously move towards people because it seems to them that we live in a type of world where if I do something for you, somehow it'll come back to me. It's like a little bit of an exchange going on there. So 2s tend to help people, 1s tend to perfect people, and 6s are trying to be dutiful to their call. And in these ways, they are the dutiful or the moving towards group. There's another word sometimes used. I can't think of it right now. Okay, so the reason I mention that, if you're an assertive type, 3, 7, or 8, and your partner is a withdrawn type, 4, 5, or 9, when you're trying to get your needs met, you might be moving towards your partner or even against them. The assertive types are said to move against if necessary. Like, remember, they're going for that goal. They're just going to go right for the jugular. Well, if you're partnered with a withdrawn type who's already withdrawing, that's not going to work, right? Because the more you push towards them, the more they pull away. So knowing that is very helpful. Now, again, that I'm not saying anything about who should or shouldn't partner. I'm just saying if you understand this about the person you're with, it'll shine a lot of light about what's going on and what the common trip-ups that you guys keep falling into, how those keep happening, because these patterns are usually at play. Okay, so that's the Hornevian groups. Now let's look at attachment styles, which is like the Enneagram version of object relations, which I am not an expert in outside of Enneagram. So I know some of you all are. I know a lot of people know a lot about object relations. I don't. But what I will tell you is for Enneagram attachment styles, there are, as the story goes, our childhood relationships sort of formed the foundation for how we experience and understand our adult relationships. And so in Enneagram, there are 3 types that are called the rejection types. Again, we've mixed all the numbers back up again. We've put them all in a bag and we're taking them back out. So rejection types 2, 5, and 8. All 3 of those somehow get this feeling that their needs aren't important or that other people aren't valuing their needs. And so they come to devalue their own needs themselves. And instead, they tend to assert that, like, offer things up in their relational situations. So 2s are, of course, offering help because that's what 2s do. 5s are offering information. And 8s are sort of like trying to stake claim on dominance. And that's how they show up in relationships. 2s are constantly trying to help you. 5s are giving you information. And 8s are dominating. So that's the rejection types. And you'll notice with them, they have a very hard time voicing their own needs in relationships. 2, 5, and 8. They just, I'm not saying they don't know what their needs are, though maybe they don't, but they'll indirectly not address them. Then also in attachment styles, in the same context, we have what's called the frustration types, which are 1, 4, and 7. And the frustration types are basically annoyed that their ideal world isn't manifesting. So for type 1s, right, 1s who are perfectionists, they think there's a right way and a wrong way. It's very black and white. This is very obvious. Follow the rules, do what's expected of you. And of course, that never works because nobody else is ever doing that. So they're eternally frustrated about that. Then we go to 4s who want beauty and idealism, and they want to be seen and they want to be loved for who they are, and they want people to see how unique they are in their contribution. And of course, people aren't noticing that. And so that breaks the 4's heart and makes them very frustrated. And then you get to type 7, and 7s are hoping that everything is going to be hunky-dory all the time. Yay, every day is going to be like Disney, and my relationships are going to be so wonderful, and we're going to go to ice cream, and then we're going to go catch butterflies in a field, and then we're, I think of Elf, the movie Elf. This is random, but that scene in Elf where he finds his dad and he makes a whole list of what he's going to do with him. I feel like that was very 7. Like he thinks they're gonna like make snow angels or something. They're gonna have a snowball fight, and they're gonna, I don't know, make cookies or something. But anyway, in the real world, this doesn't happen for 7s, and their ideal circumstances don't come to fruition. And often with them, that makes them escape into some impulsivity, right? So 1s get rigid when they're frustrated. 4s get melancholy and all their sadness and deep feelings come out. And 7s get really crazy, impulsive, and like unhinged. Okay, so, and then there's a group called the attachment types, 3, 6, and 9. And I've mentioned this before, but 3, 6, and 9 are looking to important others to sort of give them a cue as to how they should show up, and also for reassurance and for guidance. So they're not, they're reading other people to tell them what their next step is going to be. And that's because they are attached to important people. In childhood, this was probably a parent, but as they get older and they're in relationships, they're kind of watching other people to see how they're going to respond. Again, your partner is not going to have the same as you in all of these, but if you understand which one you are and which one your partner is, man, I am talking from experience. It can help with so many things in your relationships. Okay, so we've covered the Hornevian groups, which is the assertive, withdrawn, and dutiful. And then we just talked about attachment styles, which are the rejection types, the frustrated types, and the attachment types. Now let's talk about the harmonic triads, also in Enneagram. This again puts all the numbers together, kind of mixes them up and puts them in groups of 3 according to how they handle conflict, disappointment, and circumstances in life where they're basically not getting what they want or their needs aren't getting met. What do they do about that? Well, generally speaking, there are 3 types who look at the bright side habitually, consistently, and almost incessantly, and maybe even inappropriately, constantly look for the silver lining. Those are types 2, 7, and 9. Now, again, they're doing that for different reasons. 2s, because they want to be liked and they think people want to be around someone who's cheerful and happy and likable. 7s are doing it because they always want to have a fun time, and they're trying to live in a world where it's Disney World, not just for themselves, but for everybody who's around them. So 7s are optimistic, optimistic, optimistic. And type 9s, again, they are just looking for peace, for the love of God, right? So those 3 types, the high end of that is optimism is great, right? But the low end of that is if you're too optimistic, you slip into naivete, and now you can't even solve any real problems because you're just floating in the clouds. Okay, so that's the positive types. Now there's also the logical types, sometimes also called the competency types, and this is types 1, 3, and 5. And these 3 types, when they aren't getting what they want, or when they are trying to handle disappointment or conflicts, they will try to sort of regroup, put their emotions aside, and logically address the issue at hand. The key point, I think, for that is putting emotions aside. And so the 1s are doing this with self-control and self-discipline, and they're also doing this, because 1s are dialed in to being appropriate. 1s are very concerned with showing up in an appropriate way, and it can feel to them like being too emotional is inappropriate and ineffective. So they will put the emotions aside to the best that they can. Type 3s are in the habit of almost always Threes know they have emotions, but they are not really that interested in participating in their emotions because it feels like it's going to slow them down and they're trying to win. So 3 is shoving aside emotions and focusing on logic to continue moving and keep making progress towards those goals and successes. And then you have type 5, who is regularly in their heads, right? 5s are all the time living in headspace, and 5s are not real in the habit of touching their emotions anyway. They're usually trying to solve things without emotions. So anyway, for these various reasons, types 1, 3, and 5 are trying to solve these issues logically and with competence. And from a distance, that actually sounds, I don't know, maybe I'm just saying this, but it almost sounds like, oh, that's a great idea. Well, it's a great idea, except for that emotions are real and people have emotions. And if they're trying to solve things in relationships using logic, sometimes we come to an impasse because, love isn't logical. So while there are lots of really good times in this world to show up with logic, there are also times to understand that logic in and of itself might not be enough to carry us through. Okay, and then we have what's called the reactive types. I know they don't generally love that name. I didn't come up with it. These are types 4, 6, and 8. And when things aren't going how they want, and when they are very disappointed and when they're in conflict, they tend to have big emotions surface, and like everybody can see it. So the people around them know that they're mad, know that they're aggravated. So they tend to be in their own ways very emotionally expressive when they are not getting their needs met and dealing with adversity. So you have 4s who can be moody and dramatic. You have 6s who can become very suspicious, very distrusting, even of people who are very close to them. And then you have 8s who are really pretty quick to anger to start with. 8s are the most in touch with their anger of all 9 Enneagram types. And it is said that these types, 4, 6, and 8, experience these strong emotions. First of all, they can't help it, is the feeling that they have. But on top of that, having others see their emotions is a sort of a test for them to be able to tell where those other people stand with them. Are these people my friends or not? I'll be able to tell by my reaction. By how they react to my reaction. Okay, so think of it this way. Here's just a simple example. If you are a reactive type that I just mentioned, you're a 4, a 6, or an 8, and you are partnered with a logical type, a 1, a 3, or a 5, then you're having these big emotions, right? And you're thinking, okay, I'm so upset about this. I hope my partner sees this, because if he responds to me, then I know he cares about me. But then let's say your partner is the logical type. So your partner says, okay, well, the best way I can help this conversation and the situation is to put all emotions aside, because that will solve the problem fastest in the most effective and efficient way. Well, now the reactive person thinks that their partner is not their friend and not even on their side, because their partner is trying to be logical at a time like this. How could you be logical at a time like this? Look how upset I am. It feels like a slap in the face that they're being logical, and that's not why the logical person is doing that. The logical person is actually just trying to be logical, and they're doing it because they do love you and they are trying to solve it. Okay, now let's bring into the room a third person who's optimistic. And she comes in and says, hey guys, what's upsetting? What's going on? And they say, and then she says, well, hey, at least it's nice outside today. I mean, it's a great day. We could go out on a walk and maybe get some fresh air and some sunlight. Who is this girl? Now all of a sudden you're going to be like, wait, what? There's an actual problem here. The reactive person now feels like there's 2 enemies in the room, right? So they're double frustrated. The logical person is thinking something like, well, go for a walk. That's not going to solve the problem. Let's stay with the problem. Let's stay with the facts here and let's get this thing resolved. it just all unravels from there. So it's very helpful to know. Also, I want to say, this isn't really in the literature, but I will say from my own experience and even with my clients, if you pay attention to yourself, you probably can notice all three of these types that I just mentioned, all three inside of you. So in other words, what I'm saying is, let's say you're a positive outlook type. You probably also know what it is to be competent at times, and you also know what it is to be reactive, right? Because again, what we're saying here is our Enneagram is our ego, is our dominant personality, but you can shift out of it. And you have, even in your past. And that's why even if you are a positive outlook person primarily, if you think about it, you say, you know, sometimes I am reactive. And yeah, I can see how I'm kind of testing the other people in the room. And sometimes I am just totally logical. And I actually see how that aggravates people sometimes. Sometimes when you're logical, people get really mad. So I would say the more complexified you become and the more you get in touch with yourself, the more you can be aware of yourself in each moment. And then you can ask yourself in the next situation that comes up where you're not getting what you want or you have conflict or disappointment. And you can say, is this a time to be optimistic? Is this a time to be reactive? Or is this a time to be logical? And I don't know. I mean, any of those three can be appropriate in any specific time. Okay, and let's go back to the attachment styles. You know, sometimes you might show up as the attachment types 3, 6, or 9 do, where you're looking to other people first to kind of cue you in to how to show up. But sometimes maybe you're the frustrated one. Maybe sometimes you're like, you know what, I have these expectations and they're not getting met and it's really annoying to me. Or sometimes maybe you're rejecting yourself. Sometimes maybe you're rejecting your own needs and you're trying to offer something else up instead of really be honest about what it is you need. And then let's go to the first groups that we talked about here. Whether you are an assertive type, a dutiful type, or a withdrawn type. Sometimes it is necessary to just be assertive, take the bull by the horns, and get what you need to get. And other times, it's more appropriate for you to lay back, maybe quietly withdraw, maybe feel your feelings, maybe collect some information, maybe clear your mind with some harmony and some peace to figure out what the available options are. And maybe sometimes it is good to serve somebody else, you know, get out of your head. Let's go help people. Let's go help reform and let's go do our duty. In other words, all of these ways are just ways of being human. And if you recognize your dominant one and the dominant ones of the people that you are in closest relationships with, it can help with a lot of things. And when we do like relationship coaching, what we're looking for is where the two of you overlap, where the two of you don't overlap, and like, so where the clashes are, because where you guys are on the same page is probably not where you're going to see your relationship issues popping up. You're going to see issues where you guys are looking at it differently. Okay, so just a recap. Who should you partner with based on your Enneagram number? Number 1, a healthy person, because a healthy person is not stuck in his or her Enneagram number. They have learned what their ego is and what their number is and what the deficits are and what the benefits are, and they know how to use those appropriately, but they also know how to shift into other ways of being human when necessary. And that is the healthiest type of person. Number 2, it is important for you to at least know your dominant instinct and your second place and your repressed instinct. That will tell you a ton about the way you show up in the world and the way you see the world. And that will also help you understand better the people who you're closest to. And then number 3, if you take into consideration all of these triads that we just went over, the Hornevian groups, the attachment styles, and the harmonic triads, that will give you a more high resolution view of not only your own behavior, but the behavior of others. Also, so that you don't just accuse them falsely. Love gives people the benefit of the doubt. Love bears up under anything and everything that comes. It's always ready to believe the best of every person. It always hopes for the best in every situation, and it never gives up. And I am trying to show up as the best loving version of me, and my guess would be you probably are too. And so understanding people's behaviors is a great start to that. All right, gang, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, and if you would, like and subscribe if you're getting any meaning out of this at all. Thanks.